Alright folks, we've got us a message movie here, so strap yourselves in. It could get bumpy. 1984 opens with a large crowd of people watching a broadcast that gives us some backstory. The country is Oceania, and it is at war with Eurasia. Not only that, it's at risk from sedition within its own populace. Seditionists led by a man named Emmanuel Goldstein.
Too Jewish.
The crowd screams their hatred at the image on the screen. Among the crowd, the camera focuses on our three major characters. Our protagonist, Winston Smith, Julia, and O'Brien. Once the rally is over, we see Winston at work. His job is fixing errors in old news stories for the Ministry of Truth. You see, it's not good if the government is made to look bad, because government is perfect and mistake-free. The story he is currently fixing? The Ministry of Production had claimed that there was not going to be a reduction in the 30-gram chocolate ration. But
good news, everyone!
The fix is that the chocolate ration is going to be raised from 20 grams to 25. Problem solved. What's that you say? You remember having 30 grams of chocolate last month? Well, let's check the official record. It says here the chocolate ration was 20 grams and is now 25. Don't you feel better? Things are getting better thanks to government control. What's that? You say you're positive that it was 30 grams of chocolate last month? That sounds like wrongthink and possibly thought crime. You want the thought police to come take you away? It's better to accept the official narrative. After a hard day of setting the record correct, Winston heads home. In the background, monitors and speakers play the confessions of seditionists. Once he gets to his very ramshackle apartment, he goes to one corner of the room so he can't be seen by the television as he retrieves his journal from its hiding place in the wall. There he writes things that he can't say to anyone else, lest he be arrested for thought crime. He longs for a future where people are free to express themselves. Later he goes to bed and dreams of a pastoral countryside, and then even later of being a child running through the bombed-out streets near his home. An alarm sounds. It is time to get up for morning calisthenics for those aged 30 to 40. A woman instructs them that they will bend at the waist and touch their toes. She then starts counting off. Winston is following along with the count when the woman on the TV calls his name. She is not happy with how far he is bending over. She steps back from the camera so that he can see her whole body as she bends from the waist and touches her toes. She then chastises him, saying that everyone in the age group should be able to touch their toes. This also serves as an example to the moviegoer that the TVs are two-way, that Big Brother, and in this case, Big Sister, is always watching you.
Every breath you take.
Pfft. Can you imagine the government overseeing your every move? The truth is that there are too many people for the government to continually watch everyone at all times, but you can't tell when they are watching and when they aren't. So it's best to treat it as if someone is always watching. As Winston is waiting for the elevator in his apartment building, his neighbor Parsons joins him. Parsons asks Winston if he has heard the good news. The chocolate ration is going up to 25 grams next week. Winston decides to take the stairs and Parsons follows along. He asks Smith if he has any razor blades as he has run out. Smith replies that he is on his last one. Our knowledge of the truth about the chocolate ration and the lack of razor blades shows us that luxury items are not plentiful for most people. We catch up with Winston at the commissary. He's in line waiting to be served. It looks like everybody's getting the same gruel. A man named Syme asks Winston if he has any spare razor blades. Once again, Winston says no. While the food line doesn't have much choice, they do have plenty of gin. Gin, the breakfast of champions. Winston looks around for an open table and sees Julia staring at him. She turns her attention back to her companions. Winston and Syme find a seat at an open table. Winston asks Syme, how's it going with the Newspeak committee? Syme says it's going great. They get to remove and destroy words. The 10th edition dictionary is only this thick, and the 11th is going to be even thinner. Once the language is perfected, there will be no need for self-discipline. Responses will be automatic. A man sitting at another table overhears and says that they will be rid of the last vestiges of Goldsteinism once the language is perfected, and he is thrilled about the news. Syme says that by 2050, no one will be able to have a conversation like the one they are having now. Winston says, except for the proles. Proles are the lower class of people who live in abject poverty. They do most of the physical labor for the country. Syme says proles don't count. They're animals. In the background, on the public view screen, the newsreader says that production is up and that the standard of living has risen 20% over the last year.
Since I took office, families are carrying less debt. Their average savings are up. A recent survey from the Federal Reserve found that more Americans feel financially comfortable than any time since the survey began in 2013.
To celebrate this great achievement, the chocolate ration is going to be increased to 25 grams. Everyone claps in excitement. We cut to Winston back in his apartment, writing in his journal. He says if there's any hope for the future, it must come from the proles. Should they ever become conscious of their strength, there would be no need to hide in the shadows and conspire. He then relates the story of when he snuck into a proletarian area and had sex with a prostitute. Then it's back to work. This time he has to change a short biography of a one-time inter-party hero by the name of Rutherford. Rutherford has done something that the party doesn't approve of and must be erased, or as they call it, unpersoned. Winston looks at the profiles of several dead soldiers killed in the early 70s and changes the biography picture to that of Ogilvy. Instead of dying back in 1971, Ogilvy died recently at the current war front and received the awards that were previously Rutherford's. This was inspired by the real-life story of Nikolai Azov. He was the head of the NKVD from 1936 to 1938 when he lost favor with Joseph Stalin. He was arrested, tortured, and eventually executed. Pictures of him with Stalin were then altered so that it appeared as if he had never existed. Fortunately, in the modern era of 2022, execution is off the table. But have you heard anything about the savior of the Republic lately?
No one has talked tougher directly to Donald Trump on TV than Michael Avenatti.
He's Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Michael Avenatti.
Michael Avenatti.
Joining us once again is Michael Avenatti.
Michael Avenatti.
Let's bring in Michael Avenatti.
He's out there saving the country.
Michael Avenatti, thank you very much.
Don Meacham says he may be the savior of the Republic.
You are something of a folk hero now.
I'm the only person right here Donald Trump fears more than Robert Miller.
These people all like you.
I am just dying to hear what you think.
We think you guys are the tip of the spear that's going to take down Donald Trump.
But he has a bigger calling here. That being a lawyer is minimal compared to what he's doing.
I hand it to her, and I hand it to Michael Avenatti.
Michael Avenatti's a beast.
Okay, that's true.
And
he's a beast.
He's a beast.
Yes, the glorious hero of the resistance had a few skeletons in his closet that made him a liability for the party. And once you fall out of favor with the powers that be, the press quit talking to or about you. Afterwards, Winston returns to the proletarian area to visit an odds and ends store. He had bought razor blades in his notebook there in the past. He finds a piece of coral suspended in glass, but doesn't know what it is. The shop owner tells him that it's over 100 years old and costs $4. Winston buys it, and the shop owner tells him that there's another room that Winston might like to see. It's a bedroom. The shop owner's wife had passed, and he would like to sell the bed. There's also a picture on the wall. Winston recognizes the picture. It's a museum across the street from the Palace of Justice. For the time being, Winston just gets the coral and leaves. As he exits the shop, he sees a number of women putting up victory posters. One of them is Julia, who stares intensely at him. Winston returns home to write in his journal. He says that he hates her and he should kill her before she denounces him. Later, as Winston is walking to work, Julia is walking in the hall towards him. Her arm is in a sling. She stumbles and falls. He asks her if she is hurt. She says that she is fine, but could use a hand up. He helps her up and the two go their separate ways. While at work, he opens a note that she had slipped him. It says, "I love you. Victory Square." Later, back at home, Winston is helping Parsons' wife with a clogged drain when the TV announces a big victory in the war against Eurasia. Many prisoners were captured and are to be executed. He attends the executions at Victory Square. While there, Julia comes up behind him and arranges a meeting for later in the week.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you have an ex-London permit?
Yes.
Can you get Sunday afternoon?
Yes.
Take this. quite precise. I rely on you to destroy it. Are you sure you can come?
Yes.
That Sunday, Winston catches a train out of London. On the train, a group of children sing songs praising the party. He gets to a stop and he walks to a wooded area where he meets Julia. They admit their baser desires to one another and then engage in a little sexy time. We later see Winston and Julia at a group meeting listening to a man talk about how once they get rid of the orgasm, people will stop thinking about their individual needs and will be better able to focus on the needs of the party. Once the lecture is over, as everyone is leaving, Julia tells Winston that he dropped his pen and hands it to him. Back at home, he opens the pen to find a message saying, yes. We then cut to Winston back at the proletarian shop. He asks the shop owner how much to rent the room. The shop owner tells him $4 a week. Winston pays the man. Later at the commissary, Winston nods to Julia. Even later, in the rented room, Winston is smoking a cigarette and thinking how reckless it is to meet with Julia in the proletarian area where they might be seen together. Julia arrives and opens a bag that she has brought. In it is some sugar, a loaf of bread, jam, and even real coffee. She has liberated it from some inner party member. She says that there is nothing that they don't have. He tells Julia that he wants her, and she tells him that she wants him. But she has one more surprise, and he needs to turn his back to her. He looks out the window and listens to a prole woman singing as she is hanging up her laundry. Julia then tells Winston to turn around. She is wearing a proper dress and even has some makeup on. She asks if he likes her.
Do I make you horny?
And he replies, more than ever. Afterwards, back at home, Winston is writing in his journal again. He writes that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. This gives us a little foreshadowing of things to come. And then we are back at work. This time he is to rewrite a story about a party member who won the chess championship. That person is Symes, the same one we met earlier and is known to Winston. In fact, Symes is currently sitting in a cubicle across from Winston at this very moment.
Bogus.
Winston records the correction and puts a tape over Symes' picture. Back at home, he has some gin to help him forget about what he just did. Later, on his way to work, O'Brien comes up to him and tells him that he's impressed by Winston's writing for the Times. Although there were a couple of unwords that Winston used. O'Brien asks if he has seen the 10th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. Winston says no, they are still using the 9th edition in MNREC. O'Brien says he has a copy of the 10th edition if Winston would like to borrow it. He then gives Winston his home address. Then we have more writing in his journal. He says the call has finally come, and he has been waiting all his life for it. He has another rendezvous with Julia. He tells her the smart thing to do is to stop the affair. They are bound to eventually get caught. That she is young and innocent looking, and needs to stay away from people like him, and that way she will stay alive. Julia replies that she will do what he does. That she is good at staying alive on her own. He asks her when they should meet again. Julia tells him in several weeks to make sure that the coast is clear. She then tells Winston that she loves him and leaves. Before she can leave, Winston asks her if she thinks the resistance is real. She says no, none of it is real. As he is heading home, a rocket attack lands nearby as Winston dives for cover. He is then back at work, reporting on the attack from East Asia. Oceania has always been at war with East Asia. He is then back at home writing in his journal again. He says that history fades from memory and lies become truth, only to become lies again. Winston is back in bed with Julia. He is crying. He had a dream of his mother. He tells Julia about the dream. He was a boy during the war before the party came to power. His mother was holding a sister who had a candy bar in her hand. Winston grabbed the candy from his sister and fled their house. He was so hungry and he ate the candy bar. When he returned to the house hours later, his mother and sister were gone. He never saw them again and the house was overrun by rats. Winston then talks about staying human, that they don't betray one another. Julia says, if they are caught, they will be tortured and they are bound to confess. Everyone does. Winston doesn't mean confessing. He means changing how he feels about her. Julia says that they can torture us, make us say anything, but they can't actually make us believe it. That they can't get to our hearts. He tells her that he's going to see O'Brien. Cut to the building that O'Brien lives in. Unlike the housing for the proles and the outer party, it looks well maintained. Winston is led to O'Brien's apartment by O'Brien's butler. The room is sparse, but large and not run down. O'Brien nods to Winston to have a seat and offers him some wine. They toast to Big Brother and Winston downs the wine in one go. Distracted by the TV, O'Brien gets up and turns it off. Winston is astonished. O'Brien tells him that it's something that's allowed to the inner party.
It's good to be the king.
He offers Winston another glass of wine and tells him that there are thought criminals who say the resistance is not real. He reassures Winston that it is very real, that it isn't some mass of people creating havoc in Oceania. No, it is people that believe in a single idea. They commit various small crimes in the hope of spreading knowledge from generation to generation. Their goal isn't to see the change in their lifetime, but to bring about change in the future. He then tells Winston that he might find this of interest and points to the Newspeak dictionary on the table. Winston says thank you and picks it up. O'Brien then turns the TV back on and tells Winston goodbye. When Winston gets home, he looks at the dictionary. He notices that the pages are stuck together, and he works to peel them apart. Hidden in the dictionary is Goldstein's book, The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism.
No way.
Holy smokes, the resistance is real. Not only that, it wants to share some knowledge with Winston. Things are looking up. We then get a scene of the public attending a 2 minutes of hate rally, and images of troops marching to stoke the patriotic fervor that is intercut with scenes of Winston reading Goldstein's book to himself and later to Julia.
A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not victory over Eurasia or Eastasia, but to keep the very structure of society intact.
So the elite want the lower classes broke, stupid, and hungry, to keep them compliant. At least that's the theory. So how are your finances? Are you finding everything you need and it's affordable? Schools are okay though, aren't they? Well, maybe if parents complained, the powers that be would do something about it. Oh. Julia, for her part, has fallen asleep in Winston's arms. He tells her sleeping figure that to be in a minority of one doesn't make you mad. He understands how, but not why. She wakes up later and they hear a woman singing outside while doing her laundry again. They stand at the window to listen to her. Winston says the future is theirs, but they are dead. A voice then calls out, "You are dead." It's coming from the picture of the church on the wall. The picture then falls off the wall, and behind it is a TV with Big Brother's image on it. They are told to put their hands on their heads and stand in the middle of the room. Thought police swarm into the room and take them into custody. Julie is taken away, and then the store owner comes into the room. It turns out he is with the thought police. Winston is then taken to the Ministry of Love. Once there, Winston is subjected to isolation and sleep deprivation.
6079 Smith! Open your eyes!
After an unknown amount of time, Winston gets a cellmate. It's Parsons. Parsons says he didn't know it, but that he was an agent of Goldstein. His daughter discovered it, and he is proud of her. He breaks down in tears and asks Winston if he thinks they will kill him. That it would be a waste, as he would be very helpful in a labor camp. After some time, they fall asleep and are awakened by a voice from the telescreen saying, "Room 101." Parsons says they don't need to take him there. He will confess to whatever they want. He begs them to take Winston and denounces him as a thought criminal. He then resigns himself to go and gets up and follows the thought police out of the room. Later, O'Brien comes to see Winston. Winston asks, "They got you too?" It turns out that O'Brien isn't with the resistance. He's what you would today call a glowy, a government agent there to incite others to commit crimes. One of the guards then hits Winston with his nightstick. Later, his head is shaved. Now the real torture can begin. Winston imagines that he's looking out at the English countryside. O'Brien appears at his side. O'Brien asks Winston if he knows where he is. Winston answers the Ministry of Love. O'Brien then asks Winston if he knows how long he's been there. Winston doesn't. He has lost track of time. O'Brien asks Winston if he knows why they brought him here.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
The scene cuts to Winston laying on a rack in an interrogation room. O'Brien says they brought Winston here to make him sane. He then activates the rack and stretches Winston, who cries out in pain. O'Brien says that he wants Winston to know that he can cause pain any time he wishes. O'Brien then tells Winston that he is deranged and has a faulty memory. He asks Winston who Oceania is at war with. Winston replies that about a week before he was arrested, they were at war with East Asia. Before that, it was Eurasia for about 4 years. O'Brien tells him that he is deluded, that Oceania has always been at war with East Asia. He then gives another example of false memory that Winston has. He holds up pictures of Symes and Rutherford and says that these photos never existed. He then puts the pictures into the incinerator. O'Brien then tells Winston to go ahead and say what he wants. Winston says the photos exist in his memory and O'Brien's as well. O'Brien says that he doesn't remember, that only the disciplined mind can see reality. He asks Winston if he remembers writing in his diary, "Freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4. Winston says yes. O'Brien holds up 4 fingers and asks Winston how many he sees. Winston says 4. O'Brien then asks if the party says it isn't 4, but 5, then how many are there? Winston says 5, and O'Brien turns the rack on again. He tells Winston that he knows he is lying. He then holds up 4 fingers and asks how many Winston sees. Winston says 4. O'Brien tells Winston that the answer can be many different things. That reality is in the mind, but that individual minds are flawed. That only the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal, can correctly see reality. He then activates the rack again. He holds up 4 fingers and asks Winston how many he sees. Winston answers 4, that he is trying to see 5, but that he sees 4. O'Brien stretches the rack even further and asks again. Winston answers he doesn't know how many. O'Brien is pleased with this answer and stops. Later, during another session, O'Brien tells Winston that they will fix him, perfect his thinking, and once he is pure, they will kill him and erase all records of him ever having existed. He says Winston may ask some questions. Winston asks about Julia, and O'Brien says that she betrayed him immediately, that all her wrongthink has been fixed. O'Brien tells Winston that he, Winston, knows the answer to the question he didn't ask. What is in room 101? They then administer some electroconvulsive therapy. Winston dreams of the English countryside, and O'Brien asks him, who are they at war with? Winston can't remember. How many fingers? Winston smiles contentedly. 5. O'Brien then asks, how does one man assert power over another? Winston replies by making him suffer. O'Brien is pleased. He says that obedience isn't enough, that power is inflicting pain and humiliation. Power is molding minds into something of the party's choosing. There is no loyalty except loyalty to the party. There is no love except love for Big Brother. This is why the past must be destroyed, and why families must be destroyed. Winston tells O'Brien that he will fail, that there is no life in fear and hatred. O'Brien asks, why is love more important than hate? And Winston does not have an answer to that. He responds that life will find a way to defeat the party. O'Brien says that they control life, that men are infinitely malleable. He suggests that Winston is still clinging to the idea that the proles will rise up and overthrow the party. He says, forget that. The proles are sheep. Winston still believes in them, though. O'Brien says, on what evidence? Winston replies, Goldstein's book. O'Brien informs him that he wrote it. Despite that, Winston still believes that something will overcome the party. Once again, O'Brien asks, what will? Winston says, the spirit of man. O'Brien asks Winston if he is a man. Tells him that if he is indeed the last. They release him from his bindings and have him stand before a mirror to see the last man. It's a sad sight. Winston dreams of Julia, tells her that he loves her, and then she is shot and killed while in his arms. Winston is back in his cell, calling her name. O'Brien comes in and asks Winston if he loves Big Brother. It isn't enough just to obey him. Winston needs to love him. Winston says no. They take him to room 101. Here we find out what is in room 101. It's a chair the subject is strapped into. Then they are exposed to the thing that they fear most. In Winston's case, it's rats. They strap a cage with rats in it to Winston's face. The rats in one end and Winston's head in the other. There are 2 gates between the 2 cages. Open one gate and the rats get very close. Open the second and they can actually get into the cage with Winston's head and eat his flesh as they please. Winston pleads for them to stop. He says he doesn't know what they want. O'Brien opens the first gate and the rats rush forward, mere inches from Winston's face. Julie appears and says, "I love you." Winston screams for O'Brien to do it to her instead. He doesn't care what they do to her so long as they do it to her instead of him. He is finally a broken man. Later, we see Winston in a cafe playing chess by himself. Julia comes in and sits down opposite of him. News comes on the TV about the war in Eurasia. Winston is genuinely concerned. Julia then admits she told them all about Winston. Winston admits he did the same about her. Julia then leaves for a meeting. Winston's confession comes on over the TV. In it, he claims to have done all sorts of things that he never actually did, and he begs to be killed while his mind is still pure. Winston draws in the dust on the table, 2 + 2 =, and then leaves the answer blank. News comes on of a great victory against Eurasia. Winston is happy to hear it. Then the picture turns to that of Big Brother, and Winston weeps tears of joy for his love of Big Brother. The end. 1984 is based on the novel of the same name by George Orwell. Written in 1948, it was his final novel before his death at age 46 in 1950. Orwell, who believed in socialism, was not a fan of the Soviets and their brand of socialism, which is more in line with totalitarianism. In fact, Orwell fought in the Spanish Civil War alongside Republican forces for 6 months in 1937. Until he was wounded in the throat, that is. Possibly by the Soviet-sponsored hit squads that were trying to suppress the militia that Orwell's a member of. Later, he would write Animal Farm in 1984 as a warning about their ideas concerning government. If only he could have envisioned the news as a digital medium with no printed hard copies out in the wild to contradict changes. As for the movie, it came out in 1984. It was scripted and directed by Michael Radford, an English director whose work I am unfamiliar with, except for 1984. It starred John Hurt, Richard Burton, and Susanna Hamilton. Hurt carries the acting load and is well up to the task, but everyone does a good job. The movie cost £3 million and made $8.4 million, which means it made a profit. However, 1985 is not a sequel to 1984. The critics liked it, with it getting a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, 74% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 67 out of 100 on Metacritic. There have been a number of movies that take inspiration from 1984, including V for Vendetta, Equilibrium, The Hunger Games, and THX 1138. And of course, who could forget Jean-Luc Picard? The movie is rated R, as there is some violence and a fair amount of nudity. This is not one to see with the kids. And it is definitely a message movie. While depressing in its content, the movie and the novel it is based on serve as warnings that need to be heeded in order to hopefully maintain a healthy society. Warnings about the loss of individual identity to group identity, against one-party rule and the surveillance state. People say that can't happen here. Looking around, I'm not too sure about that. Anyways, check them out while you can. Until next time.